writings, and we will consider today the second part of the same topic today. Let us consider how testimonies for the church came to existence as we know today. So, testimonies for the church. We have considered that since the very beginning of her work, different visions, revelations, and messages for the public, for the believers, and also for individuals were given to her with the only purpose to encourage the spiritual progress of the believers. At the same time, some visions or revelation have the purpose only to confirm the doctrinal foundation of the pioneers that they received through the deep study and constant prayer in order to understand the present situations where they were living in. And in order to avoid any wrong conclusions in the formation of the doctrinal structure of the Advent movement, the Lord also used the spirit of prophecy to confirm, to guide, and also to protect the believers to fall in fanaticism, in erroneous or false interpretations of the Holy Scriptures. But not only this, also she received specific instructions regarded with the progress of the administration and organization of the church. The increasing movement of the seven-day believers needed guidance in the internal organizatorical aspect of the church. So, if we consider all these elements that we have mentioned now, the testimonies of the church, or the testimonies for the church, gather different kind of subjects. So, they have doctrinal confirmation of revelations. They have improvement and suggestions for organization and administration. They have instructions regarding the spiritual progress of the believers. And these three main elements are the guidelines for the compilation and putting together what we know today as the testimonies for the church. If we consider the series of the Great Controversy with this second series that we have, the testimonies for the church, we see that the content of both series is different, and which is one of the main differences. If you have heard now which will be the content general from the testimonies for the church, and we know already the content, how the series of the Great Controversy came to be, then which is one of the major differences about the content, I mean.
The testimony for the church, what you say, are instructions?
Okay, they are instructions, they are guidelines, they are confirmations related with administration, organization, doctrinal points, creation of institutions. But in comparison with the series of the Great Controversy, they are panoramical visions. They are historical periods of time. Comments of the historical events from the Bible brought to light in order to enlarge the knowledge and the understanding of it. So the first main difference is the series of the Great Controversy have to do with panoramical visions and with the historical and biblical progress of the Church of God. Now, the series of the testimonies for the church have to do with doctrinal, administrative, and organizational points. So now you have two main series, how the spirit of prophecy become a written word. And the first thing that you need to understand is these two main groups. This series or books that have to do with historical facts, with panoramical visions, and those series of books that have to do with administrative, organizative, and doctrinal matters. When the Advent movement progressed, when new members were added to it, when they realized that they were scattered and they were in different states, the distance were extremely big, and they needed to be in contact, and not always was possible to visit all the small groups. Then began to appear what received the name written testimonies, and was sent to leaders and persons, and after also to institutions. So they were specific messages that came because was not possible to make a visit, was not possible to assist them in a personal form, that Sister White personally or her husband or other groups of leaders were unable to visit these small groups or to give a solution for specific problems. This can be doctrinal or administrative and even organizational. So the main testimonies were written and sent to the leaders and persons for whom they were originally meant. Now, a treaty was done and was signed related with publications. And this happened the first time in autumn of 1855. Then is when the offices of the Review and Printing House were transferred to Battle Creek in December. This is very important date, especially if we consider that the progress, the development of the Advent movement is parallel, dependent, and motivated through the publications. Because the first institution, the first property that the pioneers have was a printing machine and a printing house. That was the first, before even a church, an office, a pulpit, or any other thing. So the development of the Advent message is connected, dependent, and also motivated by the publishing house. And we see here this transfer from the office of the Review and Printing House to Battle Creek. And a reason to do this was the improvement of the work to establish the Review and Herald, the magazine that was so important in order to keep the connection and the relationship with all these small groups scattered all over, that they needed to pray to the Lord to show them which is the best place to establish it, which will be the most convenient location in order to serve the believers and to improve also the efficiency and the distribution of the message. And specifically for this situation, at the end of this session, Sister White received a vision. And she not only presented the importance to expand the work of God, but also presented the spiritual condition of the people of God at this time. And it's sad to hear and to know that in 1855, the Lord was concerned about the spiritual condition of his people. And he showed this in vision, and thus this message was written down and was sent to all of them that Sister White received the information that needed to receive it. Where different leaders gathered together with this purpose that we already mentioned, to transfer the Review and Herald and the printing house. And 6 of the leaders that were present during the time when Sister White received the vision and she communicated to them, realized that it's absolutely necessary that this vision will be written down and also sent to the believers. So the publishing house, and especially that Review and Herald, began extremely important element in the development and the communication of the important truths revealed by God to his people in this specific time. Let us see how volume 1 appeared. This testimony of the vision of the spiritual condition of the people of God in 1855 was read the first time to the members of the church in Battle Creek. And then they decided unanimously that need to be published and be available to the whole body of believers. So they prepared the written presentation of this vision. They added other testimonies that Sister White received and was printed in a manual, like a manual, and was bound in the form of a treatise of 16 pages. And that was the first testimony for the church, volume 1. So, admonition, description, and counseling from God to the spiritual condition of his people is what motivated the publishing of the testimonies for the church, volume 1. Volume 2, we see that first volume 1 was only 16 pages. Now, the volume 2 came the next spring when the annual general meeting was held in Battle Creek. And again, only subjects related with the progress, the condition, and the improvement of the church were revealed to Sister White. And again appeared a little treaty with 16 pages, and then received the name Testimonies for the Church. That was the first time. Because the first volume, the first 16 pages were only testimonies. Now this received the completely name that we know today, is Testimonies for the Church. Originally appeared in a pamphlet in the form of an article, and later was divided in 3 different chapters. So far we have confirmed again that in the similar way how the series of the Great Controversy came to existence, also is confirmed again in the way how Testimonies for the Church came to existence. So we are visions that become oral communications, that these oral communications become written and confirmed visions that were published also in articles that become pamphlets, and these pamphlets become books. But the main difference between the series of the Great Controversy and the series of the Testimonies for the Church is the content. So, who can mention to me 3 main differences between these 2 series? I have repeated 6 times until now. 6 times, if not more. Okay, we have the first series. This is the great controversy. And then we have testimonies for the church. They are 2 different series. Now, which is the first difference between these 2 series? Which is the first difference?
Great controversy. Oh, actually, no. Go ahead.
Testimonies to the church is like counsel to the church, like church. It's like a church manual.
Okay. We have administration and organizatorical counseling, yeah, of principles. So, administration and organization. In comparison, which is the difference in the Great Controversy series? Historical, yes. And another difference more. One is historical, the other is administrative. One is organization, the other is? Other differences. Think only Patriarchs and Prophets and the first volume of Testimonies for the Church. Which are the differences? These are chronological. It's not only to present a panoramical vision, that is a historical content, but they are also chronological. So, because you have, which is the first volume of the series of Great Controversy? The first volume, which is the first volume?
First volume is Patriarchs and Prophets.
Yes. Okay. Which is the first chapter speaking about?
The creation.
The rebellion of Satan.
Excuse me?
The
rebellion
creation.
of Satan.
Yes. O sea, the condition in heaven before even the creation of the earth. Yeah? And which is the last chapter of Patriarchs and Prophets?
The last few years of David and then his death.
Yes. Now, which is the second chapter, the second volume of Great Controversy series?
Prophets and Kings.
Okay. Which is the first chapter?
About Solomon.
Yes, began with the King Solomon. Until, which is the last chapter of Prophets and Kings?
Visions of future glory. So
Is the future glory, right? But in which historical moment is presented?
After the return from Babylon and the rebuilding of Jerusalem.
Correct. So finish when they rebuild Jerusalem, yeah, and finish also with the message that Malachi presented to the people. Now, which is the third volume of Great Controversy series? Desire of Ages. Which is the first chapter?
God with us.
God with us. Yes. And which is the last chapter?
Christ's ascension to heaven and the message he gave his disciples before he ascended to heaven.
Okay. Which is the next volume?
Acts of the Apostles.
Which is the beginning?
God's purpose for his church.
Okay. And which is the last?
The church triumphant.
Excuse me?
The church triumphant. So the church, once they overcome.
Yeah, this finished with the last revelations of John. Yes, this is correct. Which is the next volume?
Great controversy.
Okay, which is the first chapter?
The destruction of Jerusalem.
Okay, and which is the last? Okay, how many volumes we have in Great Controversy series?
5.
Okay, so they are a historical content, this series, and it's built in a chronological way. We see it, how the first volume goes from this section to this section, the second volume, and so forth. Now, the testimonies for the church don't belong to the characteristic of panoramical and historical visions. They were concrete, specific visions for specific cases and have to do with administration, with organization, and with doctrine. These are the three main characteristics. These have to do with the historical and with the chronological aspect of the people of God. So both of them are connected. Which are the elements that connected these two different sets of contents of the visions and the revelations? Which are the elements that connected? Okay, everything is spirit of prophecy. Okay, so everything. Everything is a spirit of prophecy. She received it through visions, through dreams, revelations. All of them were oral and become written. So, what we see here, the process is the same. The method that God used to communicate to his people is the same. So the channel is the same. The method is the same. The origin is the same. The receiver is the same. But the content is different. And this is the reason why the information was compiled in two main sections. One related with the historical, chronological progress of the people of God from the beginning until the end of the history of this earth, and the testimonies for the church presented the other perspective, the doctrinal progress, the administration and organizatorical aspects. So in this way, we have everything together. Who can give me examples of the Bible, of series of books that confirm the same system that God followed in the past? Because we have series of books also in the Bible. The 5 books of Moses, this is a set. This is a set. In Luke 24, if you remember, Jesus divided the Old Testament in how many sections?
3.
Which are these 3 sections?
Psalms, the prophets, and the books of Moses.
Yeah. Yeah. The law of Moses, the Torah, they are the 5 books. Then we have the prophets and we have the Psalms. So in the same way, God himself divided the Old Testament in 3 main sections. So which is this first section? Which are the characteristics of this law of Moses, or the first 5 books?
They are historical.
Yes. For example, Genesis is completely chronological, historical presentation of the Church of God. Yeah? So, the first section of the patriarchs and prophets, from the section from the creation until the death of Joseph, that is the book of Genesis, is included in patriarchs and prophets. So Genesis followed the same pattern that we find, also patriarchs and prophets follow the pattern of Genesis, not in the opposite way. So patriarchs and prophets follow the same pattern as the book of Genesis. What about the book of Exodus? Which kind of combination of contents you have in this book?
Historical and instructions.
Yes. So from chapter 1 until chapter, okay, the Song of Moses is chapter 15. We can say until chapter 15. We have historical narration. And then we have the second section of the book that presented what kind of truths?
Doctrine.
About the sanctuary and the
All the instructions. Moses was called to Sinai. He was there 40 days and 40 nights. For what? Yeah. 10 commandments were announced from the mount. All the people hear this. After Moses received it in written, you see the same system. Oral communication, and after the law give in written. And Moses also write down everything that he saw that the Lord showed him there. And that was all the system of worship of the people of God. That was the constitution given to him. That was all the civil laws that they needed to have it to organize the people of God. You can imagine that we are more than 1 million people. And these people need to be organized properly. When they came out, from Egypt, they were organized according to tribes. We know that when Moses came out of Egypt, also out of Midian, back to Egypt, the Lord commanded him to go to the elders of the tribes. So the people of God was organized in Egypt according to the tribes always. So when Moses came with Aaron, they went to the elders first. And they presented everything, what the Lord showed him, that the time come for the liberation, that they will go out of the slavery. So when the people came out of Egypt, they were organized according to the tribes. Everyone knew to which tribe they belonged. They knew. Now, they are in the wilderness. How long they stayed in Sinai? How long?
By Sinai, I think it was 1.5 years.
Yes, 1.5 years. They received the revelation of the sanctuary and they built the sanctuary. They prepared everything according to the vision that Moses had done. And how is the end of the book of Exodus? What is about the last chapter?
about the erection of the sanctuary.
Yes. The sanctuary was built. Everything was ready. And now they needed to see if God accepted. The priests were anointed, were with the garments. Everything was done. And then came the special ceremony for the anointment of the sanctuary. If God will accept it, and God accepted. And the presence of the Lord came upon the sanctuary. And in this way, finish the book of Exodus. So we see that in the book of Exodus, we have the combination of these two sets. We have historical events presented in chronological way, but also we find doctrines, organization, and administration. Because also in Exodus we find the counsel that Jethro received about the division of the duties. So administrative, organizatorical, and doctrinal elements. So the way how the spirit of prophecy revealed in our contemporaneous time is not something that never happened before. The source is God himself. The inspiration is God himself. And the humans are the saints that receive the message with the purpose to transfer. So nothing changed in the process of the oral until written. And also the compilation of the content, the difference between the historical aspects and the administrative, organization, and doctrinal points. So this kind of selection is not new. Follow exactly the same biblical patterns that we find in the books from the Old and the New Testament. So let us go on. Now, they needed to decide about the sequencing. They began very humble. Volume 1 was 16 pages. Volume 2 was also 16 pages. But between 1855, when the first volume appeared, until 1864, already 10 different pamphlets were published. And they were sent free of charge. And then the pamphlets were numbered according to the order of the publications. And they become 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, until we have today in the series of 9 volumes of Testimonies for the Church. So the sequence follow according to the visions that become written information in form of articles after compiling pamphlets that were divided in different articles. And then the little pamphlets become volumes. So never think that the volumes that you have now is how these appeared originally. They become first articles, the articles divided in chapters, and then they accumulated in the sequence and become different volumes. And they increase according to the visions and the revelations received. Now, we have mentioned that in the Testimonies from the Church, you have administration, subjects, organization, doctrine, but you have also messages for institutions, churches, and leaders, and also individuals. All these elements can be related to or can handle doctrinal subjects or administrative and organizational subjects. In the case of the series of the Great Controversy, are not individual messages or addresses to group of people or institutions. Always have to do with these historical panoramical visions. And that was for the Church of God and for the public in general. Now, in the Testimonies for the Church, you find also visions that was for the whole church. And also for a specific use. But we find differences when the message was only for individuals, for leaders, for churches, for institutions. The point is that these personal testimonies that were written and sent to the person that needed to receive the message because was in danger or in problems or in a spiritual condition that God needed to admonish the person, were not isolated cases. When the person received this personal testimony, accepted and improved, was so thankful that this message was sent to this person that the person himself suggested that also this personal testimony can be sent to other people that maybe are in similar circumstances and they can be helped. And this is the reason why an individual instruction or admonishment or counsel become a general message and was of common benefit for a bigger number of people and even groups of churches. And in this way, become a published testimony. Because the other one was an oral testimony if the person was nearby, or in the form of letter. But when was decided that is for the common benefit, become a published testimony. Let us consider one specific example in order to have a general overview about these individual or personal testimonies. Testimonies for the Church, Volume 5, page 659 says, "In a vision given me June 12, 1868, I was shown that which fully justify my course in publishing personal testimonies. When the Lord singles out individual cases and specifies their wrongs, others who have not been shown in vision frequently take it for granted that they are right or nearly so. If one is reproved for a special wrong, brethren and sisters should carefully examine themselves to see wherein they have failed and wherein they have been guilty of the same sin." And this is the main purpose why individual or personal testimonies become general testimonies. Because you can see in a family that they are different children. When the parent admonish one child, the other thinks, oh, he's the one that has done wrong. But I am good because I didn't receive any reproof. So I am right. Yeah, maybe in this moment, but this don't mean that you will not do the same in the similar circumstances. And this is the reason. When you see that somebody is admonished by a minister, or other sisters or brothers came to the person and said, you know, this is not right, and so you think, okay, this is not my case. I am good. I am not doing such a thing. So automatically came this self-proudness in comparison with the other that needed the improvement. And Sister White said, in order to avoid this, and when the testimony was related with a general and common problem, the decision was given to publish also as a general testimony, because this can happen also to other people. Now, if you remember the first volume, the second volume were little pamphlets, 16 pages. Now, they were reprinted, and the volume 10 was published at the beginning of 1964. But here is a mistake. It's 1864, sorry. This is a mistake. This is 1864. We don't have today volume 10 because they were so little pamphlets, and they put it together and then become finally only 9. So they published the pamphlets in a very reduced printing. So always was a demand for those editions. So they decided to reprint the first issues. And that was parallel at the same time when they were preparing volume 2 and 3 of Spiritual Gifts that we have already mentioned what this. So what they decided is that put this together. And they put together volume 2 and 3 of Spiritual Gifts and become volume 4 of this series. So therefore you read testimonies for the church, and you see, for example, personal testimonies for institutions, for groups, and then all of a sudden a doctrinal element in another chapter. And this is the reason for it, to combine different information because originally was too small. If you remember, only 16 pages, the first pamphlet. So they decided if they reprinted, they will put more things together in order to have a really representative volume. In this first reprinting, was giving again instructions to Sister White to select the information. And then she received the confirmation that these testimonies needed to be reprinted. But at the same time, some of the testimonies that were printed in the first volume, that were in the original 16 pages, were not included in the volume when the first reprinting took place, and why this decision was taken. The reason is easy. She expressed that some of the articles, due to their character, were unnecessary for all the members of the church of all times. So they made a selection. If a testimony was given to an individual, and that was something absolutely specific, that don't have any importance for the general public, that cannot be used in the future as a principle to follow, was not selected to be included in the reprinting edition. So we see here again that among these personal testimonies, leaders' testimonies, churches and institutions' testimonies, always a selection was done if they believe that don't apply to the present time or will be not for any use for the future condition of the church. So let us consider now the three kinds of matters that were omitted, as we have mentioned. So matters of local character, matters of personal character, and matters included in other volumes. So let us consider one by one. So what this means, this local character? So if this problem have to do only with the local character elements, then can be avoided in the future reprinting. So we have now to introduce a break here, and let us close now, and we will have a break with a voluntary prayer, please.